Well, look, I pressed start. It's just me and him, and it says this hangout is on air, is live. There's been all now the live.
I'm not so sure you're here either.
I'm not sure I'm here either. We're both wearing a stylish, natty, wintry black.
Yes, indeed. Southern Hemisphere rule.
Very much a Southern Hemisphere rule. I don't know how cold it's been around your side, but for Lapanak, it's been cold here this last week. It really has. Yes, they've done some changes to this hangout, so I can tell. So I'm a bit worried that it's actually going to work. Now, the reason I've hit start maybe a second earlier is because Bruce was just telling me about the new Civil Aviation Authority of New Zealand, Australia. It's all the same, isn't it? It's all the same. A digital campaign. Maybe you can talk to that a little bit, Bruce.
Yeah, well, apparently they've launched their digital media campaign. It's that they're going to be promoting the rules and things, because they've acknowledged the big problem they have here is that is an ignorance of the rules, especially amongst tourists. So they've had some videos produced, I think 3 or 4 videos produced, probably at a reasonable cost too. And they've put those on social media, YouTube, and they're just standing back and waiting for millions of people to view them. And I sent Gary the link. Can you update us, Gary? Over a week ago.
I'm putting it there. Well, they've got a Soaraway 81. Hi, Victor. G'day, mate. Hope you're doing well. And 81 subscribers. And the first video: fly your drone the right way, be responsible. 17 views. Fly your drone the right way. No fly zones. 32 views. Fly your drone the right way. Consider others. 40 views. And fly your drone the right way. There's 17 views. So yeah, I'm not fast enough to. I was 34, so that's 66. That's 106. Eyes down for 106.
And how long have those videos been up?
1 week.
How long ago were they uploaded? 1 week. So in a week, they've garnered about a couple of dozen views apiece. Not the most successful use of social media, you might say.
I wonder how many of the animators' mother watching it again and again. No, I shouldn't. I should never. I should.
To their credit, I've had a chat with CAA and pointed out to them that this perhaps isn't working very well. I also pointed out that when they did a survey recently, my name was mentioned quite a bit in the survey, and a lot of people said, you should be working with Bruce Simpson from RC Model Reviews to get the message out there. And so I obviously was a little disappointed that they launched this social media campaign and no one spoke to me about a damn thing. And the result is that we've got, trifling below the noise floor levels of viewership. So one of the CAA guys is coming down fairly shortly. We're going to sit down and have a coffee and a chat. And hopefully I will be able to guide them in the future of this campaign so they'll actually get some views and get that message out there. Because, the internet's like a forest. If you plant a tree in a forest, there's no guarantee anyone's ever going to see it because there are so many other trees. You've got to build a path to that tree. And CAA obviously have employed the right consultants and all the smart people that do the animations. And they've got these wonderful videos which straddle a line between being so simple as to be patronizing and being simple enough to be understood by the complete morons who don't know how to use a Phantom 4. And they've done that reasonably well, but then they've just abandoned them in the forest that we call the internet. And as a result, nothing's happened. So I'm going to try and help guide them along that way, because there was some other awful stuff in the media last week from CAA. There was a conference in Nelson, which is a little provincial town, and they were talking about drones and drone rules and drone safety and things. And Airways, which is our national, Airways are the people who manage the airspace. CAA make the rules, Airways manage the airspace. A guy from Airways called Mr. Sharp, it should be Mr. Not So Sharp, I think, was saying that these drones are a menace. A 3 or 4 kilogram drone can take someone's head off or knock a car off the road. And immediately I went, oh no. For a start, the guy doesn't understand physics. He says a 3 or 4K drone traveling at 50 kilometers an hour can knock a car off the road. Well, I'm sorry, but
that's a new one, isn't it? But that's a new one. Yeah. Knocking a car off the road. That's on the list now.
They're running out of things to do, and it can take your head off. And that's why we need to get these stronger rules so these tourists don't come in. I'm thinking, name one commercial recreational drone designed for tourists to use which weighs 3 to 4 kilos.
Yeah.
There isn't one. The guy's raising straw man arguments, and when you have to resort to straw man arguments, you've got no facts, no evidence on which to base your case, and that just weakens it enormously. And so it's CAA to have said that the commercial sector is working quite responsibly. But we've got a problem with tourists and people that don't know. So we may have to bring in some of the stiffen regulations. But they've already said the big problem we've got is that people don't know the regulations. So our solution is we're going to toughen up the regulations.
Yeah.
No, it's the same circular argument that goes round and round and round. But again, as I say, someone from CAA is going to come down and talk to me. Hopefully we'll knock some sense into these people and get it sorted. But at the moment, it's just a dog's breakfast.
Well, I wonder if you were to just drop one of those videos, or or if you gave me permission to drop all 4 of them on as a compilation, or 5 of them, whatever it was, you'd be right up there. They wouldn't get those figures in them at the Sundays of people that would look for a second and will look away. But I wonder, what was I trying to say? Well, if you start, this is the sort of thing though, that if you start it, you've got to start as you mean to go on, and they've got to have a meaningful interaction in a year's time and 2 years' time, not chuck up a cartoon video and then hope that it'll work. It's got to have a little bit more to it, and there's going to be carrot along with stick. But I suppose at the same time, fair play to them for trying. Victor says they need drone songs. Yes, they probably do need your drone songs. You're probably exactly right. And how they Mustang 04, without enforcement regulations, are useless. Yes. Now the UK, of course, on July 30th, 31st, I can't remember how many days are on this month, but the 400-foot rule is being put in stone. Stones 400-foot tall are being put up all around the UK, a new taller Stonehenge. So that comes into play, and getting ready for even stricter regulations and operator licensing or registration in 2019. And as to the enforcement piece, the police are going to have more powers to do stuff. So that's all a bit of a worry, I suppose. And America is, yeah, well, they're stuffed.
Did you see the Senate committee hearing that was held last week in America? Did you? I could not believe that. I'm going to do a rant on it because it's worthy of a rant all on its own. But we've got this group of politicians questioning this panel of people that represent drones, but was not one representative of the recreational drone community, even though it's in terms of numbers, it is massively greater than all the commercial and military and stuff. But they were just sidelined. They weren't even represented there. And we had the drone industry going in for about, we need this, we can't have these hobbyists getting in our way. And then you got the Department of Defense saying, we've got to protect ourselves from this obvious threat from these recreational drones. And I'm thinking, where are these people living? What color is the sky in their world? You know what I mean? Please number all the people that have been killed by recreational drones so we can quantify this risk. And of course they can't, because no one has. And then when one of the politicians in America stood up and said, what are we doing to protect the rights of the model flyers? He was sidelined. Oh, I'm sorry, we've got to move on now. What?
I know.
And so where was the AMA? Why weren't they sitting there on that panel standing up for the rights of the hobbyists? There was like the hobbyists, the biggest group of people who fly these things, is completely sidelined all over the world. Their input counts for nothing because we've got commercial interests, and we've got the military, and we've got political interests, lobbyists. So basically we're the ones who are most affected, and we're the ones who have the least input, and that just cannot stand.
But it's going to, isn't it? You're right, it can't stand, and it's wrong. It's not big, it's not clever, but it is going to stand because those are the people in the room, and money talks and the rest walk. I have no idea why the AMA, FAA cannot choose a winner when it comes to, I've forgotten what the term for the community, CBO, community-based organization. They can't pick a single winner because they're not allowed to pick a single winner. So if there were 5, then maybe they say all 5 are. But at the moment, it's a bit of a stalemate because there's no other organization standing up for model flyers in the UK. And to Mustang's comment, it's 400 feet above the object. Yes, they do. But I don't think there's a limit with buildings. You can't be over 1,000-foot tall building and then be 400 foot on top of that. There is some regulation there. Where's I going? In the UK, they had a very good, or they have a very good FPV organization that's managed to. So you've got the British Model Flying Association, and then there's an FPV organization, and they've stood up and asked for 1,000 and proved that they could fly safely. So they got 1,000-foot ceiling for FPV. So whether that's going to fall apart now as well, that's bad news. But there needs to be an FPV group in America. There needs to be a model helicopter flying group or a model scale model flying group. There needs to be enough of them to have diversity so that the FAA can just say, yeah, all right, all 5 of you are CBOs and you've got your rules and whatever. But there's a huge stalemate at the moment. Oh, Squishy, how are you, mate? USA pilots are learning the AMA is gutless and there's no intention of actually supporting FPV. I think it's more than... I think you're welcome to come along if you want me to send a link. It's a bit more than FPV. It's all model flyers and yes, FPV is one of the things. It's every part flyer. It's an absolute scandal, and at the moment, I think we're the only people ranting about it.
I think there are other people ranting, but the trouble is, as you say, it's such a disparate group of individuals rather than a community. There's no cohesive body holding us all together. The AMA is a waste of space. It's old school, and everyone else, because the way the hobby's changed, the technology's changed, we are all individuals, not a group. And divide and conquer seems to be the approach of the FAA and all the other groups. Oh, those are just individuals. We're groups. We've got power. We've got the might. We've got a unified voice. And I don't see any way that we can create a unified community out of this group of individuals, because people are too busy just doing their own things. That's the way you do it these days. It's all about, I'll just go and have a fly. It's not a case of, well, I'm going to go and join a club and become commit myself to helping others, and it doesn't work that way anymore. It's all social media and things, so it becomes difficult to do what has been done in the past. So the old school's winning over new school, and in that Senate hearing or whatever it was, or congressional hearing, I forget what it was, but in the House committee, someone brought up the other straw men. One guy said, "Oh, we've got to worry about the radio frequency emissions of these
Yes.
SUAS, these drones, because they could. There's instances where they're taking out autopilots and planes, and what amazed me was how fragile these systems are. They talked about a garage, a door opener in a dairy or something, like a store was interfering with the aviation. What the hell? If you've got such fragile systems, how about you focus on fixing your own problems before you start trying to control other people's problems? It's like, no, it is crazy. And again, they talked about this transponder and how all these drones need to have basically this identification system, electronic conspicuous ID system, so the cops can point a thing and say, well, we know who you are, we're going to come and get you. And then, of course, one of these senators or whoever's there was very clever. He said, well, why don't manned aviation have to have these things? How come we've got Class G airspace and we've got all these aircraft without it? And the woman from the FAA says, we do have remote identification. They've got tail numbers.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
And then the senator said, well, can't we have that on drones? And the FAA said, oh, it's too small, we couldn't read those. But it's like they have their agenda. They're not going to sway from the direction they're traveling in. And it's the same all over the world. Here in New Zealand, it's pretty much on the cards that we're going to have drone or pilot registration for flying model aircraft and drones. And that's not because CAA think it's a good idea. CAA don't think it's a good idea. But we've got Airways, you've got the New Zealand Pilots Association, you've got politicians, you've got the public all saying, we must register these things before more people die. And my point is going to be, I'm not going to register. I'm not. I don't care if I go to jail. I'm not going to register, because why should I have to register? Because other people are doing bad things, and the things they're doing are not things that I'm doing. So why do I have to register because of the actions of others? Not good enough. I will stand strong and I'll go to jail if need be. And then the media will get involved, and then it'll be a big story from all over the place. Then the heat will go on these people, and they have to justify what they're doing and prove that this registration thing actually does something, because it doesn't.
Yeah, well, from our very many chats now, and I often trot it out, but I do worry that we're getting a whole load of regulations for groups of people that have an interest, that once they try their interest, drone delivery, I think, is a fantastic non-starter. And when that all fails, we'll keep the regulations. They'll be restricting us, but the drone deliveries won't be, or whatever it is. Just choose your topic. And yeah, there's some very short-sighted thinking going on. I was quite interested. This week at Farnborough seems to be the week of announcing luxurious flying cars, your Aston Martin or your Rolls Royce one. No, be gone, your Kitty Hawk, cheap, nasty Toyota job. Let's have a proper one. And those sort of things, as Mustang was saying, if well, they can't. they're not really going to work, are they? But I must admit, the what was that other one that was this week? Opener, tin or can opener is immediately what I thought when I saw that name was. But that one actually had me thinking, oh no, that does look quite simple, and oh, what would it take to build one? And I thought we should build one, and you should fly it, Bruce. That's what I thought.
Well, I'm still waiting for the master to make his announcement that he is now entering the market. Ken Moller, where is he? What's he doing? Why isn't he announced everything? He was decades ahead of the crowd. Forget Aston Martin and Rolls Royce and all the other ones. He was the man. He was the man that was going to build flying cars that were going to change the world for decades, and nothing's happened.
Well, yeah, but he wasn't that far off the mark when you look at it. I mean, his was the quadcopter. So, I mean, all these things that are coming out are not that far off it. All he's got to do is put an electric motor in it. With that opener one, do you think, I'm sure you've seen it, there's two things. The immediate thing, whilst I liked it, I love the rolling landing. I want to make a video about it, but I didn't rush to make a video about it because I want to think about it, because that one is like, oh, that's a bit, I quite like some of that. But do you think those flying surfaces will have any effect at all? I don't know if you saw on the rear wing of that.
It was hard to tell. From the pilot experience point of view, you have an awful range of sort of attitudes you're in, and when you stop at Starbucks to get your latte, and it's going to fall all over you as you pitch up, and it's going to be a disaster. They'll have to make special coffee cups for these.
Yeah, with a pivot on the on the coffee cup holder.
And they call them a flying car. But did you notice that it has tiny little wheels? Does it have wheels? I can't remember that one.
No, it didn't. No, that one. That one had the the bellies.
Where are the wheels? Yeah, and so it's like, it's not a car, is it? And the other thing is, how practical are these things? What did they say? 25 miles, I think they said, was the range, wasn't it? So it's like, especially from the flying taxi point of view, taxis have to be busy all day. If your taxi sits on the side of the road, you don't make any money. So if you have a flying taxi, how are you going to keep the damn thing in the air? Because it's going to take an hour, even on fast charge, to really charge it up. And there must be so many cycles. You know, if you keep charging, discharging, the battery is going to get hot. There'll have to be a lay period where you actually just let it cool down. They're not really practical in the sense of a flying taxi with electric power at this stage. We are now with electric power where Ken Moller was with petrol power, 20 years ago. It'll work. It works, but there are severe limitations that are restricting it from being practical, and that's the thing. If it's not practical, you're not going to make any money out of it. If you're not going to make money, it's not going to get built.
I've forgotten the name of those tail sitters that the US military had, but that was exactly their problem that they had with the contra-rotating prop job. It was the pilot that was facing the heavens, and they hated it. They could fly them, it worked, but they hated operating them. Was one of the big problems they had with them, for that very reason. So I was really surprised when I saw that rising up like it does in the video. It's like, well, have you learned nothing from history?
Motion sickness could be an issue with these things.
Yeah, and
you might notice the coffee you've got all over yourself at the end of the flight.
Yeah, Mustang's saying the range, speed, etc. are limited by the FAA, and yes, you're quite right. That's to keep into the, is it Part 103 certification? But it is very clever to go around those regulations. Well, and
I thought the limitation was the amount of fuel they could carry, so many gallons of gas. I don't think it was a range, a distance thing, is it?
I think it's by either or. I think it's either or. I think either or. But that would do for me out here. And of course, you can't fly over towns. You can't fly in controlled airspace. You can't fly at night, and so on and so on and so on.
So you can't take off from your house. You can't land at a busy airport. What are you going to do with it? It's not a commuter vehicle, is it?
Be all right here. Be all right here. I could fly. That'd be actually really handy. Whether I trust
it would get carjacked where you are, Gary.
It would get carjacked. It would be gone very, very quickly. Of course, it could carry. If it could carry, I don't know if it could carry me, because also if you look at it, it looks extreme. And that video was how much of that video was CGI and how much of it was
CGI. Yeah.
How much
I noticed some CGI in there, and they used the same real shots over and over and over and over again, and padded it out with CGI to make it look like the whole thing was, pretty capable. Yeah,
at least the one that came out from Cranfield and from what do they call it, Aston Martin, it said it was a concept today, and that looks a three-seater. Why on earth would you need a three-seater? That seems a bit crazy to me. But
so you could fit 3 people in it. I mean, you can't fit 3 people in a 2-seater. And if you have a 4-seater, you're wasting a seat. Yes, I want. Will the next James Bond movie have an electric flying car as its vehicle? When you know that they're mainstream when that happens, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. I thought exactly the same today. And the other thing is, my mate Rob from flyingwings.uk, his garden wall is the one side of the Aston Martin factory. So I'm wondering if Rob is actually the secret developer for that thing, because he lives just over the wall. So he's right next to the Aston Martin factory. Now, what I was saying in the comments is, we must see lanes along waterways and just the coast. Yeah, I am beginning to find myself wanting one of these things, but maybe I live on a dam, and if it's going to be along waterways, and you might as well have a wing and ground effect. And there's some fantastic sort of ones where people have just they've taken a hovercraft and they put poles out and they've put little bits of cameras on. They look like they work really well.
And even here in New Zealand, there's no regulation, no aviation regulations regarding ground effect craft. Providing it's a ground effect craft, it's not an aircraft. You can do what you like, apart from drive it on a public road.
Yes, well, yes, but I mean, I don't know quite what they do over ground, as it were, when they have to pull up over hedges and things. I don't know, what is the problem with we all know, you're a clever man, you'll know. Why aren't there more works about?
They can go over hedges. There was a guy in New Zealand who built it was a ground effect boat. But he sold it. It was all over the media here, all over TV, because he sold it on one of our local auction sites. And he was flying through rivers, but he was going up over the gravel and over bushes and trees, and it was actually spectacularly good for what it was. It had a Subaru motor in it, and it really, really was good. And that showed the potential for ground effect, because ground effect, I think, what are they classified as? 1.5 wingspans from the ground or something. There's some technical classification.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, it is.
And
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you've got like a 4 or 5 meter wingspan, well, that's you can go up to like 8-9 meters, which is enough to clear most obstructions. And this thing was absolutely brilliant. He only had to take off from water and land on water. The rest of the time, he could go wherever he liked, and it was fantastic.
But then there must be they would be the what are those, not quad bike, what's the things on the water that people have, those things, jet skis, that'll be it. I'm up with the modern world. Well, they would be the new jet ski. They'd be everywhere if they were that good, surely.
Well, I mean, they're still not that safe. I mean, if you become a cropper at that sort of speed, even on water, you're not going to come out of it looking pretty. So I guess there are restrictions and limitations, and it's one of those novelty things. Whoever used it would use it occasionally on the weekends. You've got to have a lot of money to set aside that much for the 2 or 3 hours a year you might use the damn thing, and not most of us don't have that sort of money. So yeah, very limited market.
But don't you think that's exactly where these Aston Martin flying cars, if you will, or they're not flying cars and they're not helicopters? Don't you think that's the market? If anyone sells any that Kitty Hawk one, that's exactly who's going to buy one, isn't it? Weekend warriors for the odd
someone from the United Arab Emirates wearing a tea-towel on their head and having lots of Lamborghinis and Bentleys in the garage will buy one just to say, look what I've got. That's what they do.
Yeah. But moving forward, with the air taxi concept and all that sort of thing, we've got helicopters, haven't we?
We do, and there's a single point of failure. I mean, you notice they got multiple motors on these things, and that one, the rickety baby cradle one, that I'm pretty sure if you had a motor fail on there, you would have to balance it by shutting down the opposing motor on the other side, which would reduce your lift. So all you could do was a controlled or semi-controlled descent if you lost a motor. I'm pretty sure. I don't think there'd be enough power in reserve to do continue flying along as you do with a twin-engined airliner. So I think it's this failure point is a big problem. If the fuse blows, what do you do? If the fuse blows, you're stuck up there all day until the aerial AA man comes and gives you a jump start.
Someone with a bit. I know a story about that. Oh no, now pull up a sandbag. You might have seen there's big tethered helium balloons around the world. They're incredibly dangerous. They are incredibly dangerous, kids. And they're actually classified as fairground rides. And one of them was deployed at a safari park in the UK. And up and down was done by a remote. in the thing, goes up to about 500 feet. And the PP9 battery in the remote went flat when they were arsing about in it one day, and some guys had to come from the factory to winch it down to get them out. But anyway, that's my story of those things. And it's one of those escaped here. I would send your friends if you don't like them. You know, they're so dangerous, but they get around aviation regulations by being fairground rides. So perhaps we need to work on that a little bit more, being fairground rides. I managed to shut the browser window in which I had some ideas for what we might talk about. That was very, very, very foolish on my part. What else was there that I saw this week? I can't remember now. Can you remember, Bruce?
You did send me an email, but I've lost it.
I know.
I'm just adjusting my camera here now, because before I was having to look at the screen, so I wasn't looking at you when I was talking. It's quite disturbing, actually. Actually, no, I think it's worse looking at you.
But, there you go.
Oh, yes. I remember. Now, I contacted a few of these people with these electric flying cars. And one of my big questions is how long have you got if the motors stop, you know, before you hit the ground? And the universal response has been the rest of your life. So
yes, that's right. All aviation's perfectly safe until about that high. Yes, it doesn't really matter. Certainly, I mean, it's the falling. It's not the falling that gets you; it's the stopping. It's the
sudden stop.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but how they're going to get these things certified, because there is so much emphasis on safety and manned aviation. And it is unproven technology. I mean, you've got to get bits certified, you have to prove the mean time to failure and all sort of stuff, and have maintenance schedules in place which mitigate the wear and tear and so forth. And how are you going to do that with something that's completely new? It's not like a new helicopter or a new aircraft where you're based on existing technology. It's all new technology. And I think this certification hurdle is going to be the really big thing. It's going to be a real problem. If they require us to have registration to fly toys, how the hell are you going to get permission to fly these electric cars over people in built-up areas? This is never going to happen, not in our lifetimes.
No, I think you're right. And the word on the street is that once the powers to be that want these flying taxis and they want to deliver stuff, manage to get 336 properly shelved, then certification will become a thing in the US. And some people are reckoning before this year is out, certification for small aircraft, small SUAS will be a thing. And but the way it's going, I don't doubt it. And unfortunately, that'll probably have a trickle-on effect all around the world, which would be very sad indeed. And I know what I was going to ask you about. I was going to ask you about your channel reboot. It all looks very swish and very not so weekly news. It's going to be weekly now.
Yes, weekly, if not more regularly. Yeah, it's good. Unfortunately, my cold lasted an extra week, which slowed me down. But the wheels are spinning now, so I've got lots of stuff on the old edit machine here and wheeling stuff out. It should be and interesting stuff. I like to think it's interesting because I'm more or less answering questions that everyone wants to know, and that's the big thing. I mean, I'm not focused so much on the reviews anymore because, as I've said, products come and go, and a review you do today in 6 months' time, it's worthless. But knowledge and information is eternal. It goes on in perpetuity. So I'm focusing on the technologies and things, and I think I've come up with some reasonable ideas. So, and I'm always keen to listen to people's suggestions and see what we come up with. But yeah,
well, I'm looking forward to the radio ones, and I was thinking about that today. I was thinking you'll put these videos out, and people are still going to ignore you. they're still gonna just I was thinking of it in terms of fast cars with big loud motors. Now people still like their big loud motors and vroom vroom rather like their 2-watt power output or whatever, and yet there are silent electric cars that are absolutely, and motorbikes especially, they're absolutely whipping the ass of traditional old vehicles, but people won't have it at all. High power radio output is fast becoming an issue, and I think it's going to be. You noticed in
that committee hearing that they're all worried about the electromagnetic radiations and the interference and things, and that's I think again it's a bit of a straw man, because I have not heard of any, apart from that situation in New Zealand where we had the drone that upset the fireworks display. I've heard of no. Yeah, right. I've heard of no situations where the emissions of a drone have interfered with any legitimate other user of the spectrum. So I think this is another straw man they're raising. But they could, yes. So we have to make sure that that's no longer a legitimate claim to control us, because no, we're operating within the confines of the regulations in respect to radio frequency stuff, and please cite all the cases where we have interfered with legitimate users. And when you hit them with things like that, they've got to put up or shut up, and especially if it's done very publicly.
Well, if any radio regulatory authority frightens me far more than an aviation authority. No, that doesn't really, because I don't do anything to warrant their interest. But they have very special powers, and they have people that they spend their lives direction finding signals and tracking stuff down. It's their bestest thing to ever do in the world. So they will find you. They will find their man. Unlike aviation regulators, who are not as they're not as quick or keen to do it. It's
interesting. Under the regulations here in New Zealand, the CAA has powers of surveillance, powers of entry. They have all these powers as well. In fact, they probably have more powers than the radio spectrum regulators. But the difference is that CAA is busy doing other stuff, so they're not actually doing a lot of stuff. Although there have been cases in New Zealand where they have, undertaken medium to long-term surveillance of companies they believe are operating in violation of the regulations, and they've done dawn swoops and things. So yeah, they have the powers if they want to. It's just what's easier. It's much easier just to say, oh, look, you've got a transmitter. Yeah, it's illegal. Here's your fine, than to build up a case and go through and get the evidence and take people to court. Enforcing radio spectrum regulations is much simpler than enforcing aviation regulations, I think.
Oh, fair play. A good point, well made. I also noticed down there, I've forgotten the name of your magazine for light sport aircraft pilots, and I've also forgotten what you call it. But our man had his article repeated in your light sport aircraft magazine. The sky is falling in, and it wasn't a chicken or an acorn or anything like that. It was still a drone. And then you very kindly sent me a link to the safety report that seemed to fail to mention the aforementioned drone going through the windscreen, and it was in fact just a failure of the canopy. Yes, I think that the media will just make whatever they want to make out of it, but the facts are slowly coming out. Another thing, there was some drone air pilots sightings of drones recently, turned out to be Chinese lanterns. But we didn't see the big retraction in the media, oh no, it wasn't a drone, it was Chinese. No, it's like they're all keen to push the negative, but they're very slow to come back with the positive, or retract things or correct things. And again, this back to the thing, if we had a body, a global body or even a national body representing us, they would be out there making their press releases saying, again, it has been proven that we are not the criminals, we are not the bad people, but there isn't anybody. And if one person makes a press release, the media ignore it. So we need to get cohesive, we need to get organized, we need to be a unified group to counter all this negative publicity, all these strawman arguments, because if we don't put up a fight, we'll go down like a ton of bricks. You've got to fight for what you stand for, and we're not doing that. We need to learn some lessons there. And well, that's why I'm surprised that the AMA is not jumping in better for the greater good, as it were, for the benefit of all. Can't you remember you were a small boy or girl checking a model airplane in a field once? I'm very, very surprised. I can't believe that they'd be that short-sighted as to want to be the rubber stamped organization and all members will be ours. I can't believe, or am I just being too naive?
I think they are naive. I think the AMA has spent money lobbying, and I think they believe that we're good guys, we'll always come out on top. The good guys, we deserve. No, it's a different world. It's not how good you are. It's how much money have you got and how clever you box. That's what it boils down to. Nothing else counts for beans in this world. You've really got to go out there and fight. But they're still living in the 1950s, when the world was a different place, and America was the powerhouse of the world. And they just believe in the good old mum and apple pie, which long has disappeared. We've got Trump as president now, and things are different. So they need to be really on the ball. And I think also they're hoping that eventually, if they play ball with the FAA will turn around and go, okay, we're going to change the regulations, change the legislation. You are the CBO. And now everyone has to come to you. So suddenly the AMA sits back and collects lots of money because people have to join them if they want to fly models. It's not going to happen, but that's what they're living in a dream world, really living in a dream world. They have to fight. Here in New Zealand, I know that the National Model Flying Association has fought very hard for model flyers' rights. The problem that we've got is that we're just as disenfranchised as every other model organization everywhere in the world. We're sidelined as well. I've looked at the minutes of the report of the meetings that CAA has with interested groups, and they've got the commercial people there, and they've got the pilots there, and they've got all these other groups represented, and there's one person from the National Model Flying Association, and I've looked at the minutes. Every point they've raised has been ignored. It's like, yeah, okay, you're here because you have to be, but we're just not listening to you. You don't count for anything. You've got no money. You know, we're talking to these important people who have got businesses and who fly airplanes. And that's the problem. I mean, it's like, I spoke to a pilot the other day, and I mentioned to him, well, you know, with these drones and things, maybe it's time to get GA up a bit higher, maybe 600-700 feet. And he said,
no GA below 2K.
I said to him, I said, well, you know, because he was saying, oh, you know, drones are a bit of a risk. I said, no. I said, you guys can't go below 500 and we can't go above 400. He goes, yeah, but altimeters are not accurate enough to give that 100-foot separation. And I said, well, then you should just be at 600. If your altimeter is not accurate enough, that's not my problem. It's your problem. Your safety is at fault. If you're not sure that your altimeter is accurate to 100 feet, then you need to go up 100 feet just to allow for that error. And he goes, no. It's like, oh, I'm a pilot. I've got a right to fly as low as I damn well like. And that's what we've got. We've got this mental attitude with some pilots that believe we are pilots. We're important people. We've sat an exam. We've got a license. You guys, you're just flying toys. That has to be overcome. They have to realize that they are just one of many airspace users, just like we're one of many airspace users. And everybody has to take responsibility for their own safety and the safety of others. It's a cultural thing. It has to be something that you can't just dictate.
Steady, common sense, steady, easy, steady. Yes.
That's what I said to the CAA too. I said, you guys, you are dictating rules and conditions to people without listening to what they're saying. It's never going to work. You've got to make sure that what you are proposing is acceptable to the groups you're proposing it to. You're talking to pilots, you're talking to the airspace management people, you're talking to the politicians. You're not talking to us. So, and you're not talking to the tourists that come to this country. So if you make a whole lot of stupid rules that do not adequately cater for the needs of that group of airspace users, they're going to ignore you, which is exactly what's happening. All the tourists come to this country and go, oh, we're just going to fly anyway. And they do. And then CAA goes, why is this happening? We don't understand it. It's like, get a behavioral psychologist on your team, please. You know, something needs to happen.
If you're a tourist coming to Africa, and particularly South Africa, and you fly in our national parks, watch out, because no aircraft's allowed below 2,000 feet in a national park of any sort, and there are rangers there going around. It's a nice tidy little fine that you can earn out of a. Two things will happen: you'll be fined, and you'll be banned from the national parks of South Africa for life, and that's happening quite frequently now. And so people make it quite easy with their noisy white plastic drones. So they're found, then they'll check your cars. That's what they do. They check your car entering and exiting. Anyway, so that's should you come here?
So would you be better off just poaching then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Much easier. much easier. Yeah.
Or carjacking.
Yeah, two subjects. Oh, I know another one. Did you see that young Luke Bannister got himself a Guinness record for flying very quickly with a VTOL, and it just made me wonder just how many subcategories of records will suddenly happen. Yeah.
Fastest drone with counter-rotating propellers. It's, I don't know, the Guinness was always looking for some other reason to give out a prize and get some publicity. But 240K something, wasn't it? It was pretty quick for a vertical takeoff. So, although, mind you, have you seen Rupert? I can't remember his last name. Omaguli Bird. He has fast. He's done FPV at 320 kilometers an hour or more, and his a vertical takeoff because he just launches them, but they don't vertically land. Unless he has a problem.
I have seen him vertically land. I've seen him vertically. He's flown some amazing speeds, and he's actually at airframe limitations rather than him limitations. So yes, I'll try and find his videos. There's better videos of the Spitfire videos, but maybe I'm an old duffer for saying that. I like the Spitfire
ones. Yeah, brilliant actually.
They're really atmospheric. But he does go very, very, very quick. I think he's currently building something crazy. I think that's for this summer season of craziness. But that will have limits in America, because I think 80 knots is going to be the cutoff speed for everything there. So,
and in the EU, where you got that kinetic energy issue, which is another limiting factor. Of course, not a problem in New Zealand, because everything is regulated. There's no cut-off points for anything. And because these 25-gram toys are just as dangerous as 15-kilogram octocopters. Another issue I raised with CAA, and we'll be talking to them at length over. I will have a chat and see if I can get someone from CAA to come on the webcast, because we haven't had regulators represented here. It's like they know what a stupid position they're in, so they're not going to dare. It's best to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak up and remove all trace of doubt, isn't it?
I suppose so. I mean, with Nats from the UK, National Air Traffic Services, have come on a couple of times on some separate hangouts, and they've been quite good. But I guess that's because they're not the people that are doing the regulating. Yeah, so it's just easier for them to not come on. What was I sort of think about the Luke thing? Oh, that it didn't really attract as much attention as it didn't go nuts in the general press. They weren't interested. People weren't interested.
The Rich Peak drone race sets and the sort of thing. It's all, you know, yesterday's news. We've moved on. We had little Thai boys in a cave, and Elon Musk was going to rescue them. And then when he couldn't get his way, he called the
terrible. Yes, terrible. Yeah.
But, it shows you how crazy the world is.
That's affected their stock price, hasn't it, today? In other stock-related news, we don't do that, Bruce. What are we talking about? Osmo Drone, Australia is copying New Zealand. It was at Stanwell Tops, aka Bold Hill, drone-free zone. Model aircraft flown there for years. It was okay for gliders. Still discrimination, but you also get that with. Oh gosh, if you go to some very famous sites in the UK, if you turn up and you've got a propeller on the front of your motor glider because you normally fly from a flat field, you'll get booed off the hill. So yeah, you get even in normal model aircraft flying, you get discredited. I don't know. What do you reckon, Bruce?
Yeah, it's one thing before I forget. I remember this. The fire danger. Did you see that video in America where some guy's flying his drone and crashed upside down? I've wondered, because we have a lot of plantation pine forests here, and I've often thought it'd be great to fly in there, but then I've thought, no, I don't want to fly in there, because if I hit a tree and it falls into the pine needles on the ground in the middle of summer, it's going to set the forest on fire, right? So there are sensible things and not so sensible things to do. And I think we have to think more about this whole fire risk, because these things are quite flammable. I mean, everyone's had a LiPo or an ESC, catch on fire. And so it's something you don't often think about when you're choosing a flying space. This bando flying, which I've been doing a bit of, if there's a lot of dry grass around, well, maybe a fire extinguisher is something good to carry in your backpack as well as everything else, because we have to be proactive in the safety thing. It's all very well saying, oh, didn't mean to do it, but it's better not to have it happen, because it's going to be further vilification of the hobby and the drones and all that sort of crap, as happened in America, where, this burnt 2 acres of grass. It was our best grass. We've been saving that grass for decades, and now it's been all burnt. So we have to watch out for that. And what was the other thing I saw? Oh yeah, Daily Mail. Do you read the Daily Mail?
Oh, of course. You see that? Oh, of course.
Some woman was complaining that a drone was spying on her, someone sunbathing, and that's right, real estate property. There was a real estate sign, and the realtors had used the drone to get some footage of a neighbouring property and accidentally caught this woman sunbathing in the backyard by her pool. And she was outraged of the privacy. Oh, my privacy's been invaded. So then she has the picture put on the Daily Mail and her face on the Daily Mail all around the world. Excuse me, you were worried that 1 or 2 people walking past might see the poster enough to make a noise, but you don't mind that the whole world sees you skinny dipping beside your pool on the international media. It shows how people have got this really warped perspective. I mean, she was a few pixels. You couldn't make her out who it was or anything.
She was a few pixels.
It was the Stryton effect. It was terrible.
Yeah. As soon as the wind blew, she was off. It's gone.
And I'm telling you, they weren't that pretty pixels. They were, but it's this public perception. We have to change. In fact, we need to have an International Drone Day where everyone goes out with their drones and shows people what this is really all about and how safe they are. And and how
careful, because the man that had that term is not necessarily, because there is an International Drone Day, and that term needs to be avoided. A bit of a dodgy fellow that was running that. But anyway, moving on.
We need to do something in the PR. We need to be proactive and get out there and push the positive side of things. I intend to do a video debunking the myths of the drones, where I'm going to take some footage and I'm going to show. Some other people have done it, but I've got a bit more reach into the market, and showing people how, from 30 meters away, it's very hard to make out who you're filming. It's not a big invasion of your privacy. And I'm also going to walk down the road with my cell phone on a pole, and just film all the houses as I walk along and see what's over the people's fences, and why aren't I being stopped? Why, why, if I was doing this with a drone, you'd be all over me like a rash, and people would be shooting my drone. No one shot my phone, and I'm quite, people are quite happy. Why the big difference?
Well, there's been rules on the books almost since cameras were invented, haven't there, for this sort of thing? Like many things that people jump up and down perceived are as issues, that there are existing laws. There's no need to change things or do anything differently to get anything enforced on it. Even here, our local Facebook group for our local town just down the hill, someone was ranting the other day and saying, someone needs to shoot down. That's right. He put an ad in the Wanted for a pellet gun required to shoot down all these irresponsible drone users. And there's not, I don't think 100 people live in the village. And it wasn't me, honest. It wasn't me. But
it was interesting that American incident where the guy drone crashed and the grass caught on fire. There was actually a dog incident because he reckons a dog. So again, dogs are more dangerous than drones. There we have the proof.
Yeah. Oh, Osprey drone did a test yesterday, 30 meters, the size of a person, so small compared to the rubbish in the media. And it'll go away. And now, okay, so we sort of talked around about electric cars, electric taxis at the beginning with big names like Rolls-Royce and Aston Martin playing the game. One wonders if there's some sort of top-down market entry from bigger industry, and eventually, but Boeing has got a flipping. Hang on, Boeing next. I think I put that up. I think it's on the page, but they've got AI and blockchain today announced with a company I've never heard of.
And the Sky Guardian made it all the way across the Atlantic, or whatever.
It is fantastic. That's never been done. Never been done. Never been done at all. Aerosonde and Maynard Hill. Never been done. Never been done. But that was clear. They changed the actual, what they said changed 3 times in the press release, from first ever crossing to first male crossing, medium altitude, long endurance, and then the last iteration of the last press releases were coming out with first civilian registered. Because it had an N number on it. So if you follow the press releases, see how they change.
Never let the facts get in the way of a good story. That's the media's motto.
Absolutely, that's what we're all about, and that's why I hope SUS news readers are smart enough. I think they are as well, smart enough to spot these things. That's why I leave them in.
When you type those stories up, can you type more slowly? Because I can't read that fast.
Yes. Oh, well, I know. Well, I can't count it. You can't cater 15 viewers now going International Drone Day. Yeah. Well, yeah. There's stories behind that. International Drone Day. Is that what they call it? I can't remember what they call it. It is something.
We get Elon Musk behind it. Is it Elon Musk to sponsor it? Eh? Yeah,
well, I don't think we want anything autonomous in it. But what about dropping the word drone from that, and just having a model aircraft flyers day where everyone's involved?
The problem is that people now identify these things as drones. They are drones. If you call them model aircraft, oh no, we're not interested in drones. That's the thing. And the media also, they don't give a damn about model aircraft. But you mentioned drone, their ears prick up and they get their little book of evil deeds out and away they go. So you've got to, perception is reality. We know that drones and model aircraft are different, but the public doesn't perceive a difference. So we've got to go along and use the nomenclature that is contemporary so that we get the coverage that we need. Then whether we call it I don't know, we have to come up with a different tack on it, but get people out there. I mean, everyone that's got a Mavic or a Phantom can go out and let someone else have a go with the controls, because once someone has a play with one of these things, amazing how their perspective changes. They can do a complete 180. I've been involved, I've been there and people have come up quite, oh, what are you doing? Oh, bloody drones. Yeah, have a go. Oh, hey, this is great. Where'd you get this? I mean, that's the way to do it. Get people on your side, and then they tell their friends, and their friends tell their friends, and before you know it, you get this change in perspective, and suddenly things turn around. It's like the car. When they first came out, people wanted to, run them off the roads because they upset the horses, and now everyone wants a car, and everyone's got a car. But we need to make
that's within living memory in New Zealand, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, well, we're we're still half our traffic is horse, but most of it's car.
It's on the way. Well, I've often thought that something like mapping waterways or something useful in the community as a group, and everyone maps a little bit of the river and along things are big projects, and get something useful for the community done. Show them being used in a positive light.
Can't do that because we need permission of the property owner. to fly over. You can't fly anywhere without permission of the property owner. And in New Zealand, we have this problem. Who actually owns? No one owns the water, according to the government. Water's not owned.
Same here. Same here.
So if you're flying over a river, are you actually flying over unowned property, or does the riverbed count? And in that case, who owns the riverbed? Because we have a lot of first people claims to land and entitlements, and a lot of the titles are unsure. And so, I mean, I wanted to find out what was involved in flying over a waterfall down the road here. And I noticed there was in the latest drone incident reports here in New Zealand, there was a helicopter a drone came within a meter of the rotor blades at this waterfall. And so I wanted to find out what's involved in getting permission. Or do you have a default permission? It took me weeks and weeks to track down the actual people who had the authority to give permission. And then the only way you could get permission was to fill out a web form online, pay money, and you had to pay the money whether they granted you the permission or not. And it was a couple of $100s. And I thought, no way is a tourist going to do this, all in advance of coming to New Zealand just to fly their drone over this little bridge in a waterfall. And so, as I say, that's what happens. You make rules like that, people just come and fly anyway, and you've got zero control over them at that point. If they've broken the rules, they're just going to be focused on doing what they want to do and avoiding detection, not being safe. So you've defeated yourself, shot yourself in the foot.
Indeed. I've just thought, you know what you could do? I'm thinking back to your comment about altimeters earlier. You ought to take whichever the cheapest thing you've got in that's got a barometer, or for the FPV goggles, take it for a flight and compare and contrast the results between the cheapest chips Chinese sensor and an old knock the dial chain altimeter, because there is a little chain in some of those really old ones where you got to tap the dial, and it will be very interesting. Because yes, you can't give manned aviation dispensation for having really old instruments.
That's what I said to this pilot. He said, these altimeters are not accurate to within 100 feet. I said, well, get yourself a GPS. Your life's on the line. Spend a little bit of time and effort and money to protect your life. Don't expect other people to look after you. You're not here to be babied. You're here to take responsibility for yourself. And besides which, if you can't provide that level of accuracy, what happens when you're in a circuit and air traffic control's giving you an altitude to adhere to? If you're 300 or 400 feet out, well, you're a menace to other people. You can't do that.
That can't be right. I'm very tempted to see to Google exactly what the altimeter discrepancy is allowed to be by law. It can't be 100 feet. I bet it can be 10 feet inaccurate.
Yeah. There's no reason GPS assist. I'm surprised that you can even get an analog barometric altimeter certified, because even with you get changes in air pressure and things, that you take off at one air pressure, you land at another air pressure, and you're because the low pressure system's moved in, or an anticyclone, and it can be quite a bit of difference out. So why are they even allowing aircraft to fly with this outdated vintage gear when we have far more accurate equipment, GPS, which works in all weathers and doesn't give a damn about the air pressure? What's going on? If we want to improve safety, let's focus on manned aircraft for a change.
Exactly. You won't join me in my quest. No GA below 2K. But yes, you've got to twist your knob when the pressure changes. Twist your knob, even if you're not flying. So I
think if we had a unified group, we could take this to the regulators and say, look, get your own house in order before you start bossing around people with toys. And I mean, the figures are obvious. Look at all the incident reports. It's all manned aircraft versus manned aircraft, all the near misses, and that's what's happening. That's where the real risks are. And if you look at the deaths overseas, it's manned aircraft crashing into parking lot or into suburban area and killing people on the ground. That hasn't happened with recreational drones. So how about we just say, well, tidy up your act, focus on the real high risk issues where people have lost their lives before you start farting around with perceived threats such as radio frequency emission of drones and their potential to be a threat to the national security. In America, that's the whenever they want to change the rules, they say, oh, Homeland Defense, DOD, this is a threat to our national security, salute the flag, rah, 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 we've got to do this. And everyone goes, oh, yes, must do that. So that's their get out of jail free card. They can do whatever they like. If they can prove a threat to national security, they get a free ticket to do anything. I think other countries should be a little bit more clever, but since this whole terrorism thing's come into place, you just mentioned the word terrorist, and suddenly, oh, you can have whatever you want. But where are the instances? Where's the proof? Where's the actual? I can't. If I'd presented a case when I was a kid at school for my homework, where's the proof that these things are dangerous? And I'd presented all this straw man argument, I'd have got an F for that paper. Yet we've got trained people who have qualified, educated people bringing the same kind of proof to a government. The government goes, oh, yes, dead right. Shows you the caliber of the politicians. You can't do this. It's ridiculous. No university in the world would accept that level of proof to get the changes that they're expecting.
It's just... inexplicable, really. I suppose at the end of the day, we've got to see more good deeds happening, more rivers surveyed, more this, more that. No need permissions or whatever. More. As soon as it becomes just a tool in the toolbox in the back of the worker's ute. That's how you guys say it there, isn't it? And people won't think it in the boot of the ute. Yeah, they won't. It won't. People won't think anything of it then. As soon as it's just a thing. It's not
people
just a thing
off the coast of Australia. They've got these drone rescued life rafts or life rings and that sort of stuff, and they spot sharks and things. That gets a brief mention in the media, but then they go back to the vilification sort of approach. The drones do a lot of things. They find people, search and rescue, and it gets a brief mention, but it's a flicker in the darkness, and then it's gone. There's no consistent, ongoing.
We're going to have more of that. It's going to be becoming more and more so. I mean, there was a great one on Everest, or somewhere. It might not have been Everest, somewhere in the Himalayas, where a chap fell off a ledge and they started walking down. It's at 20,000 odd feet. Thought that was the end of it. And someone chucked up a Mavic and they saw him. So they went off and rescued him. So that was pretty amazing, all around. And that's happening a lot more. We're getting proper, not just hype. Not just spyware.
But we're still getting woman spied on in backyard by drone, and drone threatens the airliner and all that sort of stuff. There's not a lot of balance, involved, which I find interesting, because we have people being killed by self-driving vehicles. Yet no one seems to give a damn that they're still on the road and people can put the self-drive and sit back and read the newspaper while they're driving. We don't care about the fact that people have been killed and will be killed by these things. But a drone, a toy drone, that's a real risk. We've got to worry about that. Its perception is completely.
Do you think they're beginning to backpedal on the self-driving cars, though? A little bit.
Well, they still haven't. I mean, if they were backpedaling, they'd do. If you want to drive your vehicle in self-drive mode, you'll have to register and sit a test so that we can be sure that you are properly monitoring the vehicle while you're in it. That would be what they're doing. That's what they're doing with drones. That's what's happening with drones. If you want to fly a drone in the USA, you've got to register, and basically you've got to know the rules and everything like that. There's no such requirement for self-driving cars. So why? And yet a self-driving car, you've got 1.5 tons of steel traveling at 100 kilometers an hour on a freeway in close proximity to other cars and people. That's safe. But a plastic toy in a park, way too dangerous. So it's all agendas. There's no lobbyist group saying, we must stop self-driving cars. But there is lobbyist group saying we need this airspace for ourselves. You can't let these people with the toys have it.
We've been saying it for years and no one's listening. But we'll get there in the end. The Drone Advisory Council, we believe, is meeting in semi-secret right now in Silicon Valley, and the reason I said that is because a lot of these things, not the Drone Advisory Council in America, should be a little bit more open. But the trouble is, a lot of these ideas are just coming out of software people that haven't done the actual work or flown, or it's just many times we've heard that software will overcome all, and wherever regulatory issues there are, they'll just move out the way because whatever we're doing is fantastic, and how can the regulator not possibly stand in the way, having not come from an aviation background? So it is a little bit worrying that we think that the Drone Advisory Council is a meeting, council or committee, I can't remember, is meeting right now in Silicon Valley. What other nonsense they're going to come up with?
Well, they haven't come up with a standard, unified standard for electronic conspicuity. They've had meetings and things to discuss all this, and they've had theories and things, and the FAA is not going to issue a prescriptive dictate on that, but there's still no standard. So if they can't get something as simple as that sorted, what chance do they have of sorting out all the others?
It's because there is an open standard, but they are resisting it because two major UTM suppliers have bought into Allura radio companies. They've bought big shares in the manufacturers. And there's a bit of a fight going on as to which one, they want their system to prevail. And well, I mean, allegedly, far be it from me to suggest that that's what's happening. I mean, obviously that sort of thing would never happen. But as far as I can tell, that's what's happening. Yeah, it's a rum deal, all this electronic conspicuity. I'm in sort of two minds. UTMs and and that sort of thing. Air traffic control does have to change in the modern world, as does the whole of general aviation. It needs its GPS. It needs even the little stuff. You know, we could make general aviation a whole lot safer. And to answer back into the comments, how are we going to try and get that point made to XBlades Drone is by telling them it's in their interest, it's for their safety. We're only thinking of them, and we're going to help them improve general aviation and make it safer. I mean,
but there is this decades-old culture within general aviation that we are pilots. Somehow we are better than everybody else because we've learned to fly aircraft, and some of us have epaulets on our arms, and we are gods. We are flying gods. And how dare you possibly come into our airspace with your toys? It's not good enough. Interesting, in that committee hearing, the FAA said it's never going to be our intention to regulate the hobby flyers, the model flyers, but we need the power to do it. I'm thinking, yeah, why do I not believe you when you say we will never use this power, but we must have it? I mean, if you're never going to use it, you do not need it. And that's like any sensible person. The only sensible person in that room, the politician that started grilling them, was shut down. Oh, we've got to move on. Excuse me, I've only just started. I mean, and he ended up walking out, I think, in the end. It's like, it's so blatantly obvious that this is nothing to do with safety. It's nothing to do with anything other than coin in people's pockets.
It is, isn't it? I see in the comments, MTKTM, I can't read that. What was the result of the FAA lawsuit? And XBlades Drone correctly asserted that the FAA won. And I noticed this week that the FAA issued a warning to people in America who are being conned by, yes, Victor's also corrected that is what happened. And it might yet get thrown out, But where was I going with that? I was going that the FAA are warning people that there are unscrupulous websites that are stood up and are claiming to give you a license for $150. And yes, that's not the real one. So if you want a communication message, we started with communication messages from regulators. How about even just being able to communicate properly where you get your license, your ticket from?
Yeah, there were a lot of those sites when the registration first came out, you know, pay us $25 and we'll register for you, blah, blah, blah. And I couldn't believe that people were so naive. And then some of these sites were getting quite a bit of traffic, apparently, and making a bit of money. So instead of paying $5, in fact, it was free to start with, because they'd give you your $5 back. But people were charging $25 to do this. And I was thinking, whoa, there's one born every day. But again, as you say, if the regulator isn't going to get their message out there, it opens the doors to all the charlatans and the, you know, whatever. So, hey, I should offer international drone license. It should do nothing everywhere.
But people do. No, but you see it, and you see it, and people have make little ID cards. It says commercial drone operator. No, that's great. Let's do it, Bruce. Let's do that. We'll make far more money out of that than having a drone.
Someone sent me a T-shirt with licensed drone pilot on it, and I wear it sometimes when I'm out, and people go, "Oh, how did you get that? How much did that cost? And what did you have to do?" I said, "No, I just got a T-shirt." It's all you need, guys. It's a high-vis jacket and a T-shirt, and you're done. That's it.
I've got a clipboard here somewhere. I've got the full kit. Yes, that's right. Yes, I've got a clipboard. You've got one as well. Yes, the high-vis jacket and the clipboard. Yeah, it's yeah. So if they can't get the messaging right on that, then how are then people going to leave? Because remember, back in the day, that was at $8, $5, whatever it was. That was to include the reason you were doing it was for your safety information, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was again another straw man they raised, and yet they're still complaining that people don't know the rules. Well, obviously that's not working too well, is it?
Yeah, it's a cyclical argument, isn't it? We're going to go round and round and round and round and round forever. But we should
be helicopter pilots.
I am, but I am.
Oh, you are.
Yeah, I've even got epaulets somewhere.
Cyclical arguments and going round and round.
Exactly. Yeah. So yes, in the day, I'm a helicopter pilot. I'm better than all of you. No, it's, yeah. It's is it correct? There was a process to register a phantom. Sorry, I'm just reading a comment, and there was no process to transfer the registration. Yeah, because you're not registered. It depends. There's two sorts of registration. If you're flying for fun, then it's you that's being registered rather than the aircraft. And if you are flying commercially, then I think Victor can correct me on this. I think they're still putting N numbers on on them. I'm not actually. I do stand under correction for that. And then if it's got an N number on it, then you would transfer it in the normal process as you would a normal aircraft. But perhaps Victor can stand up and answer whether I'm right or wrong on that. But you register. It's you that's registered, and you can have multiple airframes. So, but is that your understanding of the case as well, Bruce?
Yeah, I think you've got to have your registration number on the aircraft, but it's not. That doesn't have to be visible. It's one number for every aircraft, because it is the pilot that is effectively, or the operator that's effectively registered. Because we're not pilots; we're only operators. You know, we don't have epaulets. It's not
exactly.
Yeah, the drone epaulets, that should be a thing.
I know. Yeah, again, money to be made. Money to be made. There's money in them there hills.
And we could have the caps and the little carry bag. You know, the one you roll along with the wheels on it as you're going on to your boarding. You get on first then. And we get our own special cups of coffee up front. It's good.
So, pull up a sandbag again. When I was younger and perhaps more foolish, a friend and I was a lowly leading aircraftman, and he was a senior aircraftman, which is nothing. But we got ourselves on some American flights and onto an air day at an American base, because we told them that it actually meant leading aircraft captain and senior aircraft captain. Just bloody LACs. Terrible thing to do. Terrible.
Probably huge penalties for impersonating someone as important as a pilot.
Absolutely. That was Mildenhall.
I wonder, actually, I might start a website, special training site for drone cabin crew. Yeah. Flight attendants, drone flight attendants. They stand next to the operator and give them cups of coffee and make sure his seat trays return to the upright position before he lands.
MTKM, I find out because the serial number of the drone has to be used when registering. If you're in America, I'm not sure. Well, let's see. Can we find the real? Let's see if we can find the real site.
Well, let's go on one of those websites and find out. Registration.
I'm just going to put FAA drone registration into Google.
That can't be right, because you'd have to update it every time you bought a new drone or you sold one or whatever. They can't have a list of associated serial numbers. And what if you build one yourself? There is no serial number.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that isn't the case. So I'm looking to see if I can find the official one right now. Aircraft registry, drone registries. I found plenty of false ones. There's another false one. There's another false one. Label with your registration number. No, it just says on the FAA one. I'll put it in the comments now. It just says the make and model of your unmanned aircraft, is as far as I can tell. Not the actual.
So like Aston Martin, Rolls Royce. Yes.
Exactly. Your credit card or debit card. Yeah. I think that's the official one, but don't. Yeah, it's one number for all your platforms, not an N number if you're flying privately. But there's
isn't it?
Is it
one number to rule them all?
Well, you know, isn't that mandatory learning over there or something, or perhaps little people tell you? Is that what happens? Of course they do. I mean, they're everywhere. Yeah, I mean, you take them flying, that sort of thing at your club. No, you haven't seen Ron for a while. What's happened to Ron?
He's back. He's back from the Philippines, and the weather's been crap here. Actually, absolutely. It's supposed to be pretty crap this weekend again. Very little flying going on because of the winter weather. And then I look on the Daily Mail, that oracle of information. I see all these people in the UK sweltering in Fahrenheit. But I thought they were Celsius over there. But now they're all Fahrenheited again, and they're all 90 degrees, which sounds much better than
exactly. Whenever it's really hot, it's Fahrenheit. Yeah.
And then when it's cold, it's like
centigrade. Yes, exactly. Exactly. You're exactly right.
I'm starting to have my doubts about the Daily Mail as an oracle of information now.
Well.
I might have to switch to the Mirror. Since the sun went, you just can't get the information accurately.
Oh, they can get the information out of presidents, but anyway, moving on swiftly, moving on very swiftly. Yeah, okay. So I think I think we've answered that in the comments. Registration it's crazy, and yeah, safety messages and registration. You shouldn't be wandering off to But then that's, you know, the FAA, they're warning us not to go to these sites. They should be jumping on the enforcement bandwagon and getting them pulled off the internet. They should be spending a lot more time doing that.
Should we have a sweepstake? Let's run a sweepstake. How many weeks after they introduce registration in New Zealand will it be before I am arrested?
Yeah, but we don't know whether it's related. I mean, that's crazy. Having a sweepstake on whether you're getting arrested. I mean, that's almost
for flying a drone without registration. Anyway, I mean, yeah, it's yeah. I'll be interested to know how they'll justify it. Is it because they need to know who I am? Who doesn't know who I am? And is it because they need to make sure people know the rules? Well, I know the rules better than CAA. I've had to correct them on several occasions as to their interpretation of their own rules. So I can't see any justification for me registering, to be honest.
I must admit, I'm a bit miffed that in the UK and from next year you'll have to do it as well. You know, I've been flying model airplanes for like 2 or 3 years because I'm very young, and you know, it just strikes me as madness that we've gone from a place that doesn't do anything. Mate, in that case, I wouldn't mind you. I'm not a member of the BMFA now because I'm not living in England, but I would be if I was there. That's fine, but not a separate thing. You know,
so is in the UK, will that registration have will it be a minimum age? Because in the USA, doesn't there a minimum age cutoff?
There is 16. It's going to be, I think.
Yeah. So what if you're an 8-year-old wanting to fly?
I can't remember. I can't remember what it's going to be for the UK. I should know the answer to that. Something's telling me there isn't. And it is you, and it's lots. Yeah, 16. Victor says. Yeah.
8-year-olds don't have credit cards. How are they going to pay?
Yeah,
there's so many flaws in this whole setup. It's just really, either you say children may not play with toys, or children must have credit cards, or whatever. It's like, and children can't sign contracts, so can they actually commit to a registration? So there's lots of little legal loopholes, I think, that you can exploit in this if you want to be you know.
Mustang 04 makes a very valid point in the comments that if you get tased, make sure you film it.
Well, actually, make sure you get a lipo in your pocket. Your mom's get a free charge.
That would be exciting, wouldn't it? That would be exciting. Look, we've gone 10 minutes over the hour, and it's only been you and me ranting, talking nonsense, and with our dear viewer, several of our dear viewers. So, have you seen anything else, Bruce, that really caught your eye, or what's on the build table? What's the next video we can expect from the screen of green?
Well, it's a race on the edit table between the transmitter power requirements, you know, the use of power versus aerials, and the oh god, what was the other one? The OLED technology. So it would be one of those, because it's going to be interesting, this whole OLED thing. I don't think that it will be an issue, because unlike phones and TV sets, the video FPV glasses are only used for short periods of time and at relatively low brightness levels, because it's stuck right in front of your eyes. You don't have them wound right up like your smartphone in the sun. So I don't think burn-in's going to be an issue, but it's something that people should perhaps be aware of.
But then aren't we seeing a slowing down of all this FPV stuff? It's only just getting incrementally better. We're not. I don't think we're seeing the adoption, are we, that we had a couple of years ago?
Well, I've noticed there's been talking to a lot of people in different places, the hobby's taken a bit of it's leveled off. It's plateaued quite a bit recently. There was this big sudden surge when China started chunking out all these F-foamies and drones and things, and people were buying into it. And there was a massive thing that, like skateboarding, it's like the abdominizer. We've all got one in the closet that we bought and we used for 2 weeks religiously before we gave up. And I think everyone's got a little drone, but how many people are flying them anymore? And I think we've got that sort of, the curve is sort of peaked. We're going to drop off. We've passed peak drone. In a year's time, there's just not going to be the number of people certainly doing stuff that are doing it now. And even people like DJI have recognized they've reached saturation point in the market, or about to reach saturation point. I saw a press release the other day, or a news story saying DJI is worried about saturation. What are they going to do? I think, and I know around New Zealand here, maybe it's partly because of the season, but people just aren't flying as much as they might have done last year. So I think everyone's stepping back a little bit. It'll pick up again. It's always cyclic, up and down. But I think we're heading for a bit of a trough, which may last a year or two, and then something new will come along and things will change. But in the meantime, I'll just go out there and create mayhem.
I reckon DJI got to get on this flying car bandwagon, although now with Rolls Royce and Aston Martin in the game, I don't know if that'll. But I mean, I was thinking, I flew, a friend of mine bought a Mavic Air, and he foolishly bought it here for me to fly because he thought he was going to crash it, and he's a very capable model pilot. There's no reason why he would. And luckily I didn't crash it, which is amazing. But I was amazed at the build quality and how it just worked out the box, as of course it would. And it did make me think, gosh, they really ought to get into this flying car business as well, because that would be a kind of instant trusted brand were they to do that. Or fixed wing. They don't seem to be rushing into fixed wing.
No, fixed wing is a whole different kettle of fish. As you probably found with the Mavic, that's so simple to fly. If you just position them. It's a three-dimensional camera you can position in three-dimensional space. That's simple. Flying wings, they're going to be moving all the time. Or, if fixed wing have to be moving through the air, so you don't have the luxury. You actually have to plan ahead. You've got to have know where you're going. It's a whole different skill set. You cannot make them as easy to fly as a multi-rotor. I think DJI, I appreciate that. They don't want to release a product that's going to basically burden them with massive support and repair bills, and also get them into trouble when they smack into the side of buildings and things at much faster speeds than a Phantom will. I think they're very clever, sticking to their area of expertise, and I think they'll stay there for quite some time. You're going to see improvements in cameras, improvements in this follow me and this proximity avoidance type technology, but I don't think they're going to deviate too much from that path that they've carved out. And again, the big problem with building flying cars is liability. In America, you can't sneeze without getting sued by somebody. And it doesn't matter what you do to try and mitigate the risks. As soon as someone dies in a crash, you're going to get sued. And it doesn't matter whether the lawsuit is well-based or baseless. You're going to have to bring all your coins to the table and hire expensive lawyers. It's going to go through court for years. It's going to be a massive financial burden. It's going to hit your stock price. Do you really want that? I mean, most companies probably don't want that. And that's why I think we've seen so many products come to the verge of market and not go any further, because there's just not enough insurance to cover the liabilities, or the insurance is so expensive your profit margin disappears.
Good dear old Squishy saying that you need to redo the Fresnel Zone instructional video in regards to flying site safety, evaluation and selection. Gosh, take some of that nerdy knowledge as experienced FPV pilots take for granted and teach the new generation how to apply such knowledge practically. Yeah, it's true. And then your old whiteboard videos are very good. Yes, I hope the whiteboard hasn't gone in there.
So I'm actually getting a new whiteboard because the old one is not so wipeable anymore. I don't know what happens. It's a cheap one, I suppose. And I've got to wipe it with CRC every time I use it to get all the old writing off. I should have spent the money and got a ceramic one, but I got a painted one. So I'll get a ceramic one, and hopefully that'll work a bit better. But yes, I will review the Fresnel thing. I'll use a large Fresnel lens to burn ants on the ground with the sun. Yeah. Practical applications of scientific principles.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. No, well, we look forward to all your new videos. The radio ones, I say I'm especially looking forward to. I'll enjoy that sort of thing. And with that, I think we should probably run away.
I think we've annoyed enough people for long enough, haven't we?
I think we probably have. Thank you, dear viewer, for joining along. You're always welcome to email me. Yes, Gary at SUS News, if you have anything you'd like to talk about or anything like that. And well, who knows what else is going to come out this week? Still another couple of days of Farnborough to go, so that will produce some nonsense in one way or another, which is always very interesting. And then there's this sort of a raft of Chinese shows going to start coming up from the autumn, so that'll also be interesting to see what comes out there. So that's what I'm looking at from a work point of view. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing your videos, Bruce. Look forward to seeing you, dear viewer, next week, 2100 GMT. And have a safe week. And if you're flying at the weekend, don't crash too much. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.